Wyville are not able to be here. Candidates who are here are Angie DeBernardo, Erinn Grube, Andrew Rocky, James Newell, and Nancy Rogoff. While the candidates who are here did so, I will read a statement that was provided by Janice Evans. Jan Evans. Hi, I am Jan Evans. I'm sorry I cannot be with you this evening. First, I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for planning tonight's event and Hamlet Retirement Village for generously hosting this evening. I'm running for council in the village of Chagrin Falls, and I'd like to share with you my vision for our wonderful village. Let's start by working together to solve the issues facing our village. We can have cordial and constructive dialogue, respecting one another's ideas. With our combined creativity, I think we can reach common sense solutions for the issues facing our village. What are those issues? Continuing to be mindful of your tax dollars and work to solve our financial challenges. My years of experience on village council make me well suited to deal with the needs of the village, as well as familiar with our limitations. I know how to prioritize our needs. Second issue is to support our vibrant businesses, arts organizations, and our historic districts. Our downtown businesses contribute over 49% of our taxes. We must support them, finding ways to help our businesses and nonprofits as they bring in new visitors and income to our village. We need to support our local businesses with our dollars. Third is maintaining the rich history and beauty of Chagrin Falls while addressing the needs and priorities of our residents. We need to establish long-term solutions for the sake of our children, our seniors, our working families, and all of our residents, so our village will remain as one of the premier places in the country to live and raise a family, where our children can come home to raise their children. Please join me in working together to achieve these goals. I humbly ask for your vote this fall. Together we can do it. Thank you. And again, that was the statement by Janice Evans. And we turn now to our candidates who are here this evening. And on the end, if you could turn your name a bit so I can, you know, 5 exceeds, 2 I was good, 5 begins to stress me. Since you have the microphone, Andrew Rocky, we will start at that end and work our way down with 2-minute opening statements.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to start off by taking the time to thank the League of Women Voters for organizing this event and Hamlet Village for hosting this candidate forum. My name is Andrew Rocky, and I'm seeking election for Village Council. Chagrin Falls is a wonderful place to live and raise a family. My family has lived in the village off and on for the past 6 generations. My great-great-great-great-grandparents, Job and Ann Fish, lived in the area in the early 1800s. Job Fish worked as a teacher. My great-grandparents, Job's granddaughter, Mary, and her husband, Carl Kaiserman, lived on East Washington Street across from the Cuyahoga County Fairgrounds, which is now the high school. My grandmother was raised in that house, and she graduated from Chagrin schools. I have spent the past 6 years living on Bradley Street in the heart of the village, and I have enjoyed every moment of it. My wife of a year and a half and I have decided to continue our lives on Bradley Street. My wife grew up in Chagrin Falls, and I was raised in nearby Pepper Pike. I have many fond memories of Chagrin Falls as a child. Memories such as early Sunday morning breakfasts at Dink's with my family, especially my sister and my brother. Spending an entire year's allowance to purchase Markland train parts from Taggart's, which is still one of my most treasured possessions today. I also have extremely fond memories of swimming against the Chagrin Rec Center in their very unique 33 and a third yard pool, and the highlight of the summer being the opportunity to compete in the Chagrin Valley Invitational. This family-friendly event was the highlight of the summer for many young swimmers in nearby neighborhoods, and to this day, my family and me still hold the family freestyle relay record at that invitational. Every Memorial Day weekend growing up, my parents would bring us to the Blossom Time Festival in downtown Chagrin. This greatly inspired me to join the Chagrin Valley JCs when I moved to the village. After graduating from Orange High School, I attended Case Western Reserve, and I'm out of time. Thank you guys very much.
Moving on to Angie DeBernardo.
Hello everyone. I'm Angie DeBernardo, and I've served as your council representative for the last 3 years. I'm going to be asking for your vote again this November. Since moving to Chagrin Falls 16 years ago, I've worked for this area in one capacity or another. I've raised 2 children here, and during their childhood, I served for 10 years as the treasurer and communication officer for the PTO. I co-founded the pedestrian advocacy group Safe Route Chagrin, and I worked as the director of operations for Your Hometown Chagrin Falls, our local merchant association. I also manage an online Chagrin Falls information portal on social media and send out a weekly events newsletter for things going on in town. I asked you to vote for me 2 years ago because I wanted to work directly for the residents of our village. I told you that if I was elected, I'd have certain priorities, and those priorities largely remain the same. I told you that I would support the local business district, prioritize pedestrian safety and walkability, and work to improve communication and transparency between the local government and our taxpayers. I also told you that I believe the tax burden on our community was at a limit and that we must work hard to find ways to save money. I've made progress on all these goals and I will continue to pursue those if elected. During my term, I've been lucky that many of you have reached out to me freely with your own ideas. Through these conversations with the community, 2 new areas of concern have emerged. We need to talk about real estate development in this area and make decisions about how to best protect our historic properties. And in places where new development is appropriate, I think we should be more stringent in applying our zoning code to make sure that these new houses and additions fit on our small village lots. Also, as my parents have entered the age where they need more care, I've begun to think about what we as a community can do for seniors in our area that might choose to age in place and may need community support. I would be happy to discuss the specifics of any of the priorities that I've mentioned during the question and answer, or to anyone here privately at any time. I'd be happy to tell you what we've done and where I think we should go. I'd love to hear your views as well.
Thank you very much, Angie. Rogoff? Nancy Rogoff, I apologize.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming to listen to us speak.
Can't hear you.
I'm Nancy Rogoff, and I'm running for re-election to Chagrin Falls Council. I thank Hamlet for hosting this event and the League of Women Voters for arranging it. Presently, I have the honor of serving as council president, and although that requires additional responsibilities and work, it's a privilege to fill that role. I also serve as a volunteer magistrate for Chagrin Falls, and that's a position that is a volunteer position, and I hear cases of juveniles who've gotten into trouble, and if they're first-time offenders, they get to go through the diversion program that we offer, and they receive a punishment, and hopefully that's their sort of free ride, free pass for a first chance. Outside of village government, I serve on several nonprofit groups in the village, Documentary Film Festival, the Little Sugar Little Theater, and I'm a member of the Chagrin Valley Chamber of Commerce. The mayor talked about our roads. We did a road program and finished water and sewer lines on Walters Road, Hamlet Point Road. We put in new sidewalks there. We put in new sewer and water lines on River Street. That's along in front of the theater where Jekyll's is. And we're planning to do more East Washington, I think we're probably going to do next. Our sewer and water treatment plant, as the mayor mentioned, need big upgrades, and so that'll be expensive. One of my main joys and functions on council is on Planning and Zoning Commission, and I've been representative to the Planning and Zoning Commission for the time I've been on council, which is 4 years.
Thank you, Ms. Rogoff.
Good evening. My name's Jim Newell. I see a lot of familiar faces here. It's, as Yogi Berra said, deja vu all over again. I am seeking my 5th year on village council. I can't hardly believe it's been that long. Every member of council seeking re-election brings unique skills and expertise to the council to help kind of round out the council. I'm going to say a quick plug for Bob Williams, who was not able to make it tonight. He brings in a lot of knowledge on financial stuff. Your clock's not running.
It's a gift.
I bring to the village a background in civil engineering. And I work for municipalities, and I understand the importance of infrastructure. I was thrilled 4 years ago when the village supported an income tax increase, which that failed 2 previous times. But that money has saved the village on a lot of infrastructure, and I enjoy working with the mayor, administration, and the village engineer on all of our infrastructure projects. We have some big ones coming up next year. We've already started on some of them, and I really look forward to that. On top of that, I really am a huge supporter of the merchants, restaurants, and workers downtown in the village, and I listen to them when they have problems because we want to support them. We have a unique balance in this village of being a community first and also having a vibrant commercial district, which gives us a lot of opportunities. I have enjoyed learning everybody and all the different things here in this village, and I am a huge supporter of the historic significance of this village and everything that goes on that makes it the beautiful community it is. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Erinn Grube.
Good evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and to Hamlet for having us out here tonight. My name is Erinn Grube, and I am running for re-election to Village Council. I love Chagrin, and honestly, I just want to do my part to maintain our vibrant, walkable, multi-generational community. With young kids, I spend much of my time and effort outside of Village Council with organizations like Safe Routes to School, Federated Church, the Cub Scouts, and perhaps my favorite, co-chairing the Levy campaign to help save the Philadelphian school. I believe in rolling up my sleeves and doing the work of the community on a daily basis. As we look at the next couple years in the village, we look at once-in-a-generation updates that are vital to our infrastructure and many ways into how we live. It is time to replace miles of aging water, storm, and sanitary lines, which means intensive resurfacing roads of Washington Historic District where we have these lines. So we're going to see disruptions. And through these processes, we also need to be maintaining and developing new ways and effective ways to communicate with our residents so they understand what's going on, understand where there's disruptions, and minimize those impacts as much as possible. We also are looking at the repair of the wind walls in Riverside Park and the bridge project with the county. And we need to maintain both those programs while maintaining a vibrant downtown and supporting the businesses that will be impacted. And that's going to take a lot of work as a community. We have to set priorities and ensure all of these projects are completed with an eye towards our common future. At the end of the day, I'm a worker. I believe in asking questions, both in our meetings and to residents. I believe in ensuring that the information on which I make my decisions are transparent to the community. I believe in reading every line of the zoning code that comes before us and every line of all the contracts. And perhaps most of all, I believe in the listening role. Sitting through sometimes uncomfortable conversations, helping residents who are not feeling heard, advocating.
Thank you very much. And I need to apologize. I have many pieces of paper up here, and I apparently do also have a statement from Darren Wyville, who is seeking election. Good evening. My name is Darren Wyville, and I am running for a seat on the Chagrin Falls Village Council. I recognize the importance of your organization and its nearly 100 years of political advocacy. Thank you for taking an interest in this election. I am a 1985 graduate of Chagrin Falls High School. After spending 10 years away from the village, I purchased a home 1 block away from my parents, who many of you probably know. I have 4 children who are very active in the community. I'd like to address 2 questions this evening. Why am I running for Village Council? And what upcoming issues are important to me? I'm running for Village Council because I believe that some of my strengths run parallel with the needs of local government. I run a business that services thousands of customers throughout the state of Ohio. In my role, all departments of the company report to me. I am expected to understand quite a lot. This requires listening, collaborating with peers, and making difficult and final decisions with transparency. I strongly believe that we need to make decisions we can support, even if I believe that no one is going to notice or question them. I am also a curious person who will take time to study the materials that will eventually need to be acted on, and I will discuss these matters with committees and residents. There are several issues that will soon impact our village. The recertification of our water department is a critical test that our village must pass. The process of recertification will require our full attention and understanding of the procedures. We will embark on significant capital improvement projects, including but not limited to reconstruction of the Main Street Bridge over the Chagrin River and resurfacing of heavily traveled roads such as East Washington Street. This not only affects those residents living on East Washington Street, but our children, as this is a significant bus route. Making good decisions about how to deal with these disruptions is another challenge we face. Businesses need to thrive despite a decline in the retail environment. We need to find ways to support them so that they can continue to make Chagrin Falls a shopping and dining destination. I am concerned about the tax burden on our residents. I recognize that one of the challenges we face is how to continue to control costs. I would like to continue improving our code and procedures so that investment in housing and development in Chagrin Falls matches the character and history of our neighborhoods. I would also like to explore ways to improve walkability in the village, our parks and playgrounds, and improve pedestrian safety. Thank you for your time this evening. And again, that was submitted by Darren Wyville, who is also seeking a seat on Village Council. Once again, if any of you have any questions for the council candidates, please raise your hand, get a paper, get your question submitted. This is a contested race, so questions might matter. I think we'll start with the question to each of you. What village committee do you currently chair or would you like to chair? And what are the priorities of that committee for the next few years? For example, if you chair the Parks Committee, how do you feel about expanding the play equipment? Things like that. Is there one of you who wants to go first? Erinn?
Hi, I currently chair the Streets and Sidewalks Committee, and we oversaw the Walters Road project, and we've overseen the Greenbrier project, and we had somewhat limited involvement in the River and West Street projects. I also am the council representative to the Parks Commission, and so we have worked through a number of issues over there in terms of looking at the pathway along the river, and the playground remains a question among young parents who would love to see some updated equipment there.
I am chairman of the Utilities Commission, and I'm also a council rep for the Parking Commission in the village. And of all the challenges you could get, the Parking Commission one is probably tops. I think we did a pretty good job trying to resolve some of the parking conflicts and limited space problems we had. But most importantly, we were able to get a lease with the Heinens Group to move the grocery store into the Chagrin Falls Shopping Plaza, which has been a huge success to the village and to the Heinens Group. And we've ruffled out a lot of the different issues through the hard work of the mayor and administration, and we have some more work to do with that. Utilities Commission, there is a lot going on, as we've heard from just about every candidate tonight, and I'm very active in that.
Thank you. Presently, I'm chair of the Finance Committee, and that committee generally meets as a committee of the whole, which is the entire council will meet and review our budget. During the month of October, we have 2 dates set up to review the capital improvement budget, and that will be presented and discussed, and hopefully some of you will come to our meeting. I'm also the council representative to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we redid the entire zoning code in about 2 years, and finally was adopted by council and went into effect officially on September 11th. Our council is generally run by committee, and that's where most of the work is done. Prior to the council meetings, conversation about various things, and so we have a Board of Zoning Appeals. That representative is not here tonight. It's Julia Lip, and she's not seeking re-election, and that's the board that hears appeals, variances, people that want to do something different than what the code allows.
Thank you.
I'm currently the chair of the Safety Committee. The 2 major things that we've done over the last couple of years are, one, we worked on increasing a lot of safe pedestrian crossings in the area. We added a new sidewalk on Walters Road so that the people who live on Hickory Hill could access the sidewalks on Bell Street, and made that intersection more conventional and put in a crosswalk there. And I'm happy to see I live up in that area, see a lot of kids walking in that area. We also put another crosswalk up in North Street to allow pedestrians to cross the road there more safely. We also worked with the school and our police department to get the school resource officer into the schools after parents really made a move wanted us to have our police force expand and put an officer in the schools. What we're working on now is, I'm sure maybe the person who wrote traffic on the card earlier, the light timing downtown is not working to move traffic through, and this creates a safety concern in that pedestrians crossing the road end up crossing against angry drivers who are trying to beat the time or make turns to beat a red light. It's a dangerous situation. So our engineer has the traffic engineer working on that.
Thank you.
Okay.
So the two that I'm most interested in, I'm running as a new candidate, are streets and sidewalks, and then planning and zoning, because both of these are going to have a drastic effect on basically the way the village feels, the culture, the history coming up, especially with the this whole concept of larger homes being built in the village and the way that they're looking and feeling and fit within the village. And then, streets and sidewalks with the Main Street Bridge renovation and replacement, that is going to lead to a drastic amount of work. And it's planned at the moment as a 2-year project, so that is a massive undertaking for the village, and it is going to disrupt pretty much everybody who lives in the village. So it's going to be important that it's handled well, and that it is handled in a manner that impacts our businesses the least amount, or at least in a method that they feel is survivable.
Mr. Rocky, actually, we have another question just for you. As a possible new member of the council, what goals do you have for the future of the village?
So my big goal for the future of the village is to improve the communication and the transparency of the village government, because we're lacking communication between the people who live here and what's going on in the village government. And so one of the things that I said is we've got things that are affecting the village at the moment, and things that are going to be affecting us a drastic amount. So things like the Main Street Bridge renovation. Currently, we don't have a great way of communicating, a primary communication source that isn't throughout our chairs newspapers or Facebook, but we don't have a primary communication method that has been down pat. And without that, it's going to make the renovation of the bridge and other future large improvement projects extremely difficult for the residents who live here, because if you're not connected to the information, it's going to be really frustrating when something's happening and you don't know what's going on. And that's basically it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Given the limited budget, what do each of you see as the village's greatest need? What would you prioritize as the highest need?
Want to go to that side?
Jim's going.
I have seen a lot of municipalities get in financial problems because they did not keep up with their infrastructure. Talking water, sewer, and stormwater, and the roads. We've made great strides on that, and we're very close to getting it to just be an annual maintenance program instead of major reconstruction. Some of these projects that the mayor mentioned cost us $2-3 million. We've got some approaching that for next year. Those projects are going to last 50, 60, 80 years. So that type of investment, I think, is critical to get done, and then we're going to have funds available for other stuff. I'm also very impressed with the site walk from River Park, and the library. Those little things have more appeal because they're visually aesthetic. They're used every day by pedestrians as opposed to the underground utilities. But I really am a proponent of making sure that when we have the funds, we get the infrastructure up to speed, and then we will not have to spend the big dollars just to the annual maintenance.
I I fear we're probably all gonna sound like broken records here. But when we go to our taps and we get clean water that's drinkable, that you can use to cook with, that you can give to your children, I mean, it's just such a vital piece, and it's something that we sort of have forgotten about and taken for granted. When we replaced the lines on River and West Street, those were installed in 1914. Teddy Roosevelt was president, and we did not have a national park system. So if we delay things too long, we also start looking at regular water main breaks, which is what you see in front of the BP on a regular basis. So it's important that we look at these aging lines, get them fixed, and see some efficiencies down the road, especially with our manpower needing to call them out in emergency overtime type situations.
You don't have to answer if you don't want.
Financial priority.
Yeah, given limited resources, what is your first priority?
This treatment plant, the upgrade of the treatment plant is certainly a priority, and it's an EPA requirement. So whatever that costs, we're going to have to do that to maintain our water system. We have upgraded our health care for our employees, which is something that we don't see from the outside, but the employees, it's important for them and they appreciate it. And we've saved over $100,000 on that healthcare system that we use in the village, and the employees are happy with it. So that's been a big savings in an important area, and that money can go to other important things like streets and sidewalks and those kinds of things that are very expensive.
And my friend Erinn was correct. We are going to be a broken record. We're at the point in our village where we're not doing anything very fun. We're replacing the roof on the house and not putting in a swimming pool. Right now, we need to do infrastructure. We have all these old water lines that we need to replace, and that has to be the financial priority at this time. After that, if I had to choose, it would be the safety forces. And then after we fund those things, we can move on to other issues.
So for me, it comes down to this kind of concept of future-proofing. So when we spend money, we want to be making sure that we're spending money wisely, and we don't have to go back in 2 or 3 years and replace it. So we want to make sure that we're spending our money in a way that is going to last. So that unfortunately does take a little bit of legwork and looking at all the options to say, hey, look, I don't want to be redoing this. For example, with the water treatment plant, to make sure that the sewage treatment plant, to be, making sure that we are making an improvement that's going to last another 30 years, isn't going to just last another 10 years. And that's an important thing, because when we do have these large capital expenditures, again, the city doesn't want to be paying for it for a second time. Thank you.
And the next question I had up was the number of water main breaks and what is happening on that. So clearly there's concurrence that that is an issue. Has council considered declaring the whole downtown neighborhood in the village an historic district to prevent further demolition of homes? Or do any of you individually see that as a need or as a negative thing to be done? Yeah. An historic district, the downtown area to be declared an historic district.
I'm going to just roll it down. The downtown area, there are 3 historic districts currently in our area. There's an area down what we all call the historic district, where the houses are, is declared a historic district. Our commercial area is a historic district, and also an area on Washington Street has been registered as a historic district. There has been some talk about whether this should be expanded or not. The way that you do this, the way that you establish historic districts has changed from when we did it originally, and now requires a lot more work and generally money, because you have to hire a professional. So one thing that we have considered, and we would debate this because there are differing views up here, is whether we should look into becoming a certified local government, which is another way to preserve specific properties in town, in which case we'd have to have some type of commission that would designate certain properties that would be protected by other regulations, but it wouldn't be an area that's protected as a district.
Do any of you wish to present alternative information or different viewpoint?
Yeah, I think she covered it pretty well. The downtown historic district is a registered historic district, mainly the Triangle Park area. Unfortunately, just because the house is in a historic district, it doesn't 100% preclude someone's ability to tear it down. And that's an unfortunate thing. One of the things that we look at on and off is maintaining the historic houses, and that's a big problem. Is when a house isn't maintained regularly, new roof, repairing the siding, painting, repairing broken windows, that kind of thing. And houses are, they deteriorate over the years, lack of maintenance for 20, 30, 40 years, and then they're in such bad shape that people come along and say, well, I can't really fix it. So that's an issue that we need to look at is preserving and taking care of the historic houses that we have.
The only thing I would add, I feel like Angie is here, there. The only thing I would add is that I feel like we need to start looking at, especially houses built from 1920 to the 1950s, as we look at single level living as that became built in the village post-war, and what it means to protect our housing stock diversity through some of the historical protections. So I think there's some opportunities we should be having these conversations in a proactive manner versus when someone has come with a proposal to tear something down. And I'd like to see the conversation with the certified local government so we are treating homeowners fairly so they know when they're buying a property what those historical protections are for that property.
I do have what may be an informational kind of question as opposed to a candidate question, which whoever knows. The recent purchase of a historically significant home by a developer who then is contemplating tearing down the house and dividing the property to build homes or condos, subdividing the property. I assume that would require a zoning change?
I don't think that's, we shouldn't,
That's the one we can't answer that.
What?
It's the one we shouldn't answer.
I think that, that's something that, first of all, at least the last time I looked at the record, the property has not changed hands. There's been no formal proposal made to the village. We all, presently on council, can't really comment on what we think about it or speculate, because it's all speculating. Nothing's been proposed formally. It's all speculation. But since we each would have to probably, in the event that there was a variance request or some other kind of request, ultimately that comes to council. And council would, in that case, be acting as a judge on the matter. And so we can't comment on anything about that, whether we, what we think about it, even though it's all, like I said, it's all speculation anyway, because nothing's been filed. When it is, everyone will know about it, and we'll have meetings and we'll see what's going on.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to kill a rumor and to factor information. So thank you. And the last question. Asking each of you, do you wish for any changes in how the council is being governed? Do you see problems or opportunities in the current form of governance?
I think our form of government, mayor, council, is working well. One thing that I keep seeing, we're a home rule village, and that means that we have our own charter, which is our own structure and format of government. We have to follow, mostly have to follow the Ohio Revised Code laws, but we can make our own rules and laws on most everything. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, those in Columbus who pass laws are kind of nipping away at our village's ability to control what we do. There's sale of gun issues that we have to change some of our rules because we're not allowed to do things that we used to do. The collection of RETA taxes, the local income tax is still being debated in the courts. So we're losing some of the state's taking away some of the power and ability that we have to regulate ourselves, which I think is really unfortunate. But the overall structure that we have, the council, the mayor, our council has several committees. Not all of them were talked about today, because some of those representatives aren't here.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a differing opinion, Mr. Rogoff?
I mean, I do or something. So the one thing I really do want to see is I do want to see our village government seeking feedback from the people who live here, because they are the ones that every decision affects. So in our current situation, I feel that sometimes it can be a little bit hard to find out information about what's going on or the decisions that people are making. So I believe by increasing that communication and that transparency will allow people to be more vocal and proactive when issues or situations arrive that they would like to bring to council's attention. And I think that that's where a lot of this opaqueness stems from.
I interpreted the question the same way you did. So I would just say, and I know some of my fellow council people here will probably kill me, but I would like to have our commissions and our committee reports be a little bit more filled with information so that council knows what's bubbling up from the committees before it becomes an actual piece of legislation. And that information will find its way to the public through the CBT reporters who shows up, as well as postings on the village website, which go out as email every Sunday night, and also other communications that we have with the residents. But I think we need to have that information out in the public before we're actually looking at a piece of legislation, and that will take us kind of changing the way we do things, so we're not always starting a discussion when we're looking at a bill to pass, or an ordinance to pass.
So we've developed a habit where we often see legislation for the first time days before we're looking for a vote on it, and as we find ways to push that information into more, or get those contracts and everything in a more proactive manner, I think it allows more of that time to create communication and encourage that transparency with the community.
There's two breaking questions. One is rather short. Would you support staggered terms for council so that all are not elected at the same time?
Yes, I would like to see us switch to a 4-year term where you have 3 people elected the same year as the mayor and 4 people 2 years later. I think that fact that you have 7 people that 7 seats you're trying to fill, I think it encourages uncontested elections, which I think makes us less vetted in some ways, because how can you figure out who 7 people are? It's a hard job, so I would like to see us move to a 4-year staggered term.
I agree with Erinn. I think it could be a good idea to have staggered terms. It's interesting as we get close to each election year, how many people are running. We have 8 this year. When I ran, we had 10, but we've had a lot of elections where there were 7 candidates and obviously 7 seats. I think a staggered term would be good, and I think a 4-year term, much like what the school board does, and is the only way we could stagger.
Yes, I've advocated this before. This would require a charter change. Our village charter determines the length of terms, and the mayor has a 4-year term, so we would have to put this to a vote of the village residents. And I think that we've talked about this, and that we probably will put this on the ballot. It won't be on this November's ballot, because the time's not there to, before the ballot will come up. But we'll probably talk about it and put it on the ballot and ask the voters to vote for 4-year staggered terms for council.
I agree as well, and I just add the other reason for that is because it's a 2-year term right now. You come in, if you're a new council person, you have about a 6-month learning curve, and then you only have about a year and a half that you are in the swing of things. It'd be great if we had half the people already in the swing of things and half the people coming in to bring new ideas and new energy. So I think staggered would certainly be good, and I could support 4 years.
As being a little bit of an outsider here, I do think that the staggered terms are a good idea, especially for what Angie was saying, that you have people coming in these waves. But I don't necessarily believe that going to a 4-year term is necessarily the best idea. Maybe having a 4-year term for a group of 3 people and a 2-year term, and then getting on a 2-year offset election would be kind of nice because it does hold people accountable. I mean, it's a much shorter time. If you don't like what is going on, you don't like what's happening, you're not waiting, 4 years to replace somebody, you're only waiting 2. So sticking to a 2-year could potentially be a benefit.
One final question. We are here in Hamlet Village, and Ms. DeBernardo did address the issue of senior citizens. But we have a question. There are many young couples moving in. How do you plan to bring village life to the millennials?
Hi, my name is Erinn. I have 3 children. They're 9, 6, and 4. First of all, I think the film meeting school is part of that. Saving that as a community helped. I think it helps solidify the fact that children belong in the heart of the village, and there's a growing number of parents out there who are searching for returning to the idea of quote-unquote the 1970s childhood where kids could play in the streets, where they can run to a friend's house. It's something we embrace in our household, and sending my son off to school down Hall Street every morning, it's like the most adorable thing. And these things, along with Heinen's in the village and being able to do, you park your car, you spend your entire weekend, you work outside the village, where you can walk places, you can pretty much do most of your shopping in the village these days, and I think that is what a lot of young families are talking about wanting, and I think a lot of young families are embracing.
I think it's vital to the village to be an attractive, affordable place for younger millennials, as you call them these days. How to go about that, I don't know. Housing prices seem to keep going up in Chagrin, but there has to be some way that we can make it affordable for young families to stay and work in neighboring communities, and as Erinn said, be able to spend a weekend with their children in the village without getting in and out of a vehicle 10 times. I'm a big supporter of that.
I think although some house prices are getting alarmingly high, there are still many areas in the village with smaller, medium old houses that are relatively affordable for young families, places for children to play, and they can go to the park or local parks. So even though there's small lots and don't have a lot of room for playing at home, we have areas in the village where children can go to play, public areas where they can go to play.
I think we actually do have a lot of young families moving into the area. Maybe that's just because I'm up on Bell Street, and I'm now working as a crossing guard, so I see an enormous number of them come by me in the morning as they head to school. We have more there than normal than we used to when I moved in 16 years ago, and I think that may be because of housing prices in the downtown area. This is something I've noticed, and I do think one of the ways we could encourage millennials to be able to move into this area is to protect a variety of housing types within our area. If we let everything become an enormous house and very expensive, we will not see young families here. I also think we should move more towards the digital type of communication and embrace that, because I think that a lot of young people expect that, and we are doing that. Both Erinn and I are on Facebook and spend a lot of time doing government online if we can. I will continue to do that.
So this one seems like it was pointed at me because I am a millennial, but I mean, so I really think the 3 things that attracted me and attract a lot of people that I have met that are of the same age as me are the top-ranked schools, the walkability, and the charm of the village. And those are the 3 things. So protecting that, but then adding in this additional aspect of kind of ease of communication, ease of accessibility to what you need. Because, for example, I get something in the mail, it gets put on my desk at the end of the day, and it gets read 3 weeks too late. And that's what happens because I come home at 8 o'clock some nights, and I'm off doing whatever I got to do. But so giving people the ability to opt into getting their written email communication from the village to their email would be is a positive. And I don't want to take away people's ability to get mailed communication. I always believe that should be the default form, but allowing people to sign up for online email communication.
Thank you very much. We are out of questions. We move on now to final closing statements. Historically, we do these in reverse order. So, Erinn Grube, we will begin with the closing statement. You have 1 minute.
Thank you all for coming out tonight and taking the time to hear us talk a lot about the water and the storm sewers and the sanitary sewers in the village. We have work that needs to be done, and we need some thoughtful, curious people to sit in village council and ask the questions, talk to residents, see what they need. We have a wonderful community. I mean, really, if our biggest problem is water, we're doing very good. But we have some work to do, and I would like to do that work. I enjoy doing that work, and I would love to have your vote in November.
This is going to sound like a broken record. We live in a fabulous community, and it's very exciting for me to be part of the council and also to help be a little bit of a go-to person for people that have questions. I get asked all the time, what's going on with this, what's going on with that. I make every effort to learn as much detail about everything presented to council and also bring to council issues that are brought to me by residents. It's been a lot of fun. The last 4 years have been tremendous. The transparency has improved the trust of all the residents, and we seem to all be in sync. There's always going to be issues. There's always going to be disappointments by certain groups in the village, but I think as a whole we have a wonderful community. And that word community is not used enough in our society today. We don't see any kind of real bad blood or any kind of major issues that separate us. We all seem to be very, very proud residents of the village, and I'm a proud member of this council. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming here tonight and listening to us talk about the village. I know that you must live in the village and you vote, and so I certainly hope that you will vote for me for council. I'd love to go back on council. You're welcome to call or email with any questions you have. Our names and phone numbers and email addresses are on the village website. Call us. Call me if you have any questions. Thank you.
What's most important to me about being your village official is that I want to make the government work for you. Again, I want you to feel that we work for you. After all, it's your tax dollars, these are our tax dollars that are buying our water system that you've heard so much about, and our streets that we're paving, and our parks that we'll be improving. And I want you all to be part of that conversation so that we can make decisions about what we want to do with this community together. I also want to, I hope I can have your support, because I've always been the kind of person that I don't just say, this is an idea that I think we should do. I'll do the work, and I'm the person who would sit there, I'll try to make it happen. And so I hope that you will, in November, hire me again. And I do say hire me because if you vote for me, you are hiring me to be your representative. Thank you.
Thank you guys for listening to me tonight. But I support maintaining and preserving the history, beauty, and culture of Chagrin Falls, improving the physical and technological infrastructure of the village, improving the excellence in city service in order to provide the best possible living environment in our village, communication and transparency in our village government with a commitment to listen to the concerns of all the citizens and residents of the village, and providing an environment where our local businesses can grow and succeed. And really, I do think that we were making strides to this, but there are certain things that we could change and certain things that we could do better to help all of these things. And I think that one of the things that we are kind of striving for is this changing demographic that was brought up, and having some representation to represent that changing demographic will definitely help us to get there. Thank you, and have a great rest of your guys' evening.
Thank you all very much. Thank you to all the candidates for coming tonight. Before we all leave, I have several announcements. First is that there will be two ballot issues, two county issues on the ballot. I want you to know about them so you're not surprised by them. The first one is County Issue 3 for the Tri-C renewal and increase levy. So it is renewing the current levy of 1.9 mils and adding an increase of 0.4 mils in support of Tri-C. If you vote no on it, you're voting down the 1.9 plus the increase. It's not just the increase you're voting down. So yes supports the renewal plus the increase. No on the Tri-C levy removes both of those factors. second one that is on the ballot is County Issue 6, a charter amendment change regarding the office of sheriff. You may have been reading this in the news. We currently have an appointed sheriff. We used to have an elected sheriff until he got canned. And everybody thought already appointed sheriff is the way to go. That also has its controversial aspects apparently. So this is a charter change that would go back to making the office of sheriff an elected position. And the other announcement, so we have forms for you to register to vote. If you need to register, you need to re-register if you moved. So if you've moved since you last voted, you need to re-register. I urge you to check to make sure you are still registered if you have not voted since before 2016. You all remember 2016? If you didn't vote since then, just check and make sure on the County Board of Elections website. And finally, Becky Thomas has petitions that she is asking people perhaps to sign.
It's for getting background checks for people that are buying guns online or buying guns at gun shows where they're not registered gun sales people. And we're trying to get something going